Maya Chen's hands were covered in blood when the Coast Guard helicopter landed on the hospital roof exactly 24 hours later. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Rewind to 11:47 p.m. The night before, when Maya was adjusting the IV drip on 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez, whispering soft reassurances as the child drifted toward sleep. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune overhead, casting that sterile glow that had become as familiar to Maya as her own reflection. The faint scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, mixed with the distant sound of monitors beeping their steady rhythms throughout Mercy General's pediatric trauma unit. "Sweet dreams, little one," Maya murmured, her small but steady hands making final adjustments to the IV flow. At 28, she'd been doing this for 6 years, long enough that these movements had become second nature, muscle memory guided by countless nights of caring for broken children. The exhaustion lines around her dark eyes told the story of another 12-hour shift. But Maya's professional demeanor never wavered. She was small in stature but possessed a quiet strength that both colleagues and families had come to rely on. Tonight, like every night, she'd been the steady hand in chaos, the calm voice when parents panicked, the precise touch when seconds mattered. "Another quiet night in paradise," Dr. Martinez called from across the unit, updating his own patient charts. "You still planning that beach jog tomorrow morning?" Maya smiled, glancing toward the windows, where a gentle ocean breeze drifted through the cracked panes. "Absolutely. Sunset Pier at dawn. Perfect way to decompress after..." The emergency bay doors exploded open. Code blue, pediatric trauma bay, 3! The announcement shattered the peaceful night like glass against concrete. Maya's head snapped up, her body already moving before her mind fully processed the words. This was the call every pediatric nurse both expected and dreaded, a child's life hanging in the balance. But as the paramedics rushed through those doors, as Maya caught her first glimpse of the small, motionless figure on the gurney, she had no idea that the next 60 minutes would destroy her career, challenge everything she believed about herself, and ultimately transform her into something she never expected to become. A hero. 5 minutes earlier, Maya had been living in the comfortable routine that defined her professional life. The pediatric trauma unit at Mercy General was her domain, a place where she'd found purpose after years of searching for meaning in her work. She moved between patient rooms with practiced efficiency, her soft-soled shoes silent against the polished floors. Room 3002. Tommy Martinez, age 10, recovering from appendectomy. Room 304. Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname. Age 6, monitoring for concussion symptoms after a playground fall. Room 306. Emma Rodriguez, the 8-year-old with the IV drip Maya had just adjusted. Each child represented a story, a family's worst nightmare temporarily placed in Maya's capable hands. She'd learned early in her career that pediatric nursing wasn't just about medical expertise. It was about becoming a guardian angel for the most vulnerable patients in the hospital. "You've got that look again," observed Jake Williams, the respiratory therapist making his final rounds. "The one that says you're thinking too hard." Maya glanced up from her patient charts, pen poised over the final notes of her shift. "Just making sure everything's perfect before I head home. You know how it is." Jake nodded. They all knew how it was. In pediatric trauma, perfect wasn't just preferred, it was essential. Children's bodies responded differently to trauma, recovered differently from procedures, required a level of attention that kept nurses like Maya awake some nights, replaying every decision, every medication dosage, every word spoken to frighten parents. "Dr. Stevens left an hour ago," Jake continued, referring to the department head. "Said to tell you excellent work on the Henderson case yesterday. Kid's going home tomorrow." A warm feeling spread through Maya's chest. 7-year-old Alex Henderson had arrived 3 days ago after a severe asthma attack that had nearly killed him. Maya had been the primary nurse, coordinating his care, monitoring his progress, teaching his parents how to recognize early warning signs. Cases like Alex's reminded her why she'd chosen this profession. The memory took her back 6 years to her own family's crisis. Her younger brother David, age 8 at the time, had been hospitalized for weeks with pneumonia that wouldn't respond to standard treatment. Maya had been in college then, studying business because that's what her parents expected, what seemed practical and safe. But watching the pediatric nurses care for David, seeing their expertise and compassion in action, had changed everything. The way they explained procedures to terrified parents, the gentle firmness they used with sick children, the advocacy they provided that when families felt lost in the medical system, it all spoke to something deep in Maya's soul. By the time David recovered fully, Maya had changed her major to nursing. Now, standing in the same type of unit where her brother had been saved, Maya felt the familiar sense of purpose that had guided her through nursing school, through the grueling first years, through the emotional challenges that came with caring for sick children. The digital clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes left in her shift. She gathered her patient files, preparing to give a report to the night nurse. Just another routine evening at Mercy General, the kind of quiet shift that allowed for thorough care and peaceful recoveries. That's when the sirens started wailing in the distance. Maya paused, listening. Emergency vehicles were common around the hospital, but something about these sirens seemed different, more urgent. Multiple units responding to something serious. She moved to the window, peering out toward the emergency bay. Red and blue lights were already visible in the distance, growing brighter as they approached. Not unusual for a Friday night, but the concentration of emergency response suggested something significant. Dr. Martinez appeared beside her, also drawn to the window by the sound. "Beach accident, maybe?" he suggested. "High tide, people making poor decisions after a few drinks." Maya nodded, but a chill was working its way up her spine. Call it intuition, call it experience, but something felt wrong. The emergency vehicles were arriving too fast and with too much urgency for a typical beach incident. "Maya," Jake called from across the unit, "you might want to stay close. That looks like a pediatric unit heading this way." Her blood went cold. Pediatric emergency response meant a child was in serious trouble. Maya's shift was officially ending, but she'd never walked away from a child in need. Not once in 6 years. She moved back to the nurse's station, pulling on fresh gloves and checking the trauma bay equipment. Whatever was coming through those doors, she'd be ready. The sirens grew louder, closer, until they seemed to be right outside the building. Then, suddenly, they stopped. In the silence that followed, Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the familiar pre-crisis tension that always preceded the really serious cases. She'd learned to trust this feeling, to use it to sharpen her focus and prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. The emergency bay doors remained closed, but she knew that would change soon. Somewhere out there, paramedics were stabilizing a patient, making final preparations before transport to the trauma bay. Every second counted in pediatric emergencies. Maya's shift was over. She could hand her patient files to the night nurse, clock out, go home to her quiet apartment, and prepare for that dawn jog on the beach. No one would question her decision to leave. She'd worked a full 12 hours, had done her job professionally and thoroughly. But as she stood there, listening to the sounds of emergency response just beyond the doors, Maya knew she wouldn't be going anywhere. Not when a child needed help. Not when she had the skills to make a difference. The emergency bay doors burst open. "Code Blue, Pediatric Trauma Bay 3. 7-year-old male, near drowning, no pulse for 4 minutes." The paramedic's voice cut through the night like a blade. Maya's body responded before her mind fully processed the words, muscle memory and training taking over as she sprinted toward Trauma Bay 3. The child on the gurney was small, too small, his dark skin tinged with the blue-gray pallor that every medical professional dreaded. Water still dripped from his hair onto the stretcher, and his lips were the color of winter sky. Maya's experienced eye took in the details instantly. Hypothermia, prolonged submersion, potential brain damage from oxygen deprivation. "What do we know?" Dr. Martinez demanded, appearing beside the gurney as the paramedics transferred the boy to the trauma bed. "Marcus Williams, age 7, the lead paramedic reported, hands moving efficiently as he connected monitoring equipment. Fell through rotted pier planking at Sunset Point around 11:30. Water temperature approximately 62 degrees. Witnesses estimate submersion time at 3 to 4 minutes before bystanders pulled him out." Maya's hands were already working, checking pupils, assessing breathing, connecting cardiac monitors. No pulse, no respiratory effort. Core temperature showing dangerous hypothermia at 89 degrees Fahrenheit. CPR initiated on scene, the paramedic continued. Transported with ongoing resuscitation efforts. No response to standard protocols. Dr. Martinez began barking orders. Get me warm saline, heating blankets, and prep for intubation. Jake, I need respiratory support standing by. Someone call Dr. Stevens. We might need... Dr. Stevens is in surgery, Maya interrupted, not looking up from her assessment of the child. Complex craniotomy, at least 2 more hours. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. Dr. Stevens was the department head, the final authority on experimental or high-risk procedures. Without his authorization, they were limited to standard protocols that weren't working for Marcus Williams. Maya stared down at the boy's face and her heart nearly stopped. He looked exactly like her brother David had at that age. Same bone structure, same curl to his dark hair, same delicate features that made him seem impossibly young and vulnerable. Maya, Dr. Martinez said quietly, we need to follow standard hypothermic resuscitation protocols. Controlled rewarming, cardiac support, respiratory assistance. Dr. Stevens will have to make the call on anything more aggressive. She nodded, but her mind was racing. Standard protocols for pediatric hypothermic drowning had a success rate of less than 30% when cardiac arrest exceeded 4 minutes. This child had been without a pulse for at least that long, possibly longer. The trauma bay doors burst open again, and Marcus's parents rushed in, their faces etched with terror. Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. The woman, Marcus's mother, reached toward the bed but was gently redirected by a nurse. We're doing everything we can, Dr. Martinez assured them, but Maya could hear the careful neutrality in his voice. The voice medical professionals used when they weren't sure there would be good news to share. Maya connected the cardiac monitor and felt her stomach drop. The rhythm was erratic, barely registering as a heartbeat. Marcus's core temperature was still dangerously low, and his brain had been without adequate oxygen for far too long. Standard protocols called for gradual rewarming, careful monitoring, and hope that the child's young body could recover from the trauma. But Maya had seen enough hypothermic drownings to know that gradual wasn't always enough. Sometimes aggressive intervention was the only chance. She glanced at the clock. 11:52 p.m. 8 minutes since the child had arrived, which meant he'd been in cardiac arrest for at least 12 minutes total. Every minute that passed decreased his chances of survival, and more importantly, his chances of surviving without severe brain damage. Dr. Martinez, she said quietly, what about rapid active rewarming? Core temperature manipulation with warm peritoneal lavage? Dr. Martinez looked at her sharply. That's experimental, Maya. We'd need authorization from Dr. Stevens, maybe even the ethics committee. The risk of complications versus the certainty of death, Maya interrupted, then immediately regretted her tone. She took a breath, steadied herself. I'm sorry, doctor, but we're losing him. As if to emphasize her point, the cardiac monitor began showing increasingly irregular patterns. Marcus's heart was failing, his body shutting down despite their best efforts with standard protocols. Maya looked at the child's parents, still standing near the doorway in their wet clothes, probably having jumped into the water themselves trying to save their son. The mother was gripping her husband's hand so tightly that her knuckles were white, and both of them were staring at the monitors as if they could will the numbers to improve. How long until Dr. Stevens is available? Maya asked. At least 90 minutes, Dr. Martinez replied. Probably longer. 90 minutes. Marcus Williams didn't have 90 minutes. He probably didn't have 90 seconds. Maya had read about rapid active rewarming in pediatric hypothermic drowning cases. The procedure involved using warm saline lavage to rapidly increase core body temperature while providing aggressive cardiac support. It was controversial, risky, and definitely outside standard protocol. But it had saved children in cases exactly like this one. The problem was that performing the procedure without departmental authorization could end her career. Hospital policy was clear. Experimental or high-risk procedures required approval from the department head or the chief of staff. Violating that policy meant disciplinary action, possible termination, potentially losing her nursing license. But Marcus Williams would be dead long before authorization came through. Maya stared at the child's face, thinking about her brother David, thinking about all the children she'd cared for over the past 6 years, thinking about the oath she'd taken when she became a nurse. First, do no harm. But what did that mean when following standard protocol meant watching a child die? Maya, Dr. Martinez said gently, I know what you're thinking, but we have to follow protocol. We can't risk... The cardiac monitor alarm pierced the air. Marcus's heart rhythm was becoming dangerously erratic, showing signs of imminent complete cardiac arrest. Maya looked at the monitor, then at the child, then at his parents. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. I'm not letting this child die on my watch. The words left Maya's mouth before she fully realized she'd made the decision. Dr. Martinez turned to stare at her, understanding immediately what she intended to do. Maya, don't. Think about your career, your license. If something goes wrong, if I do nothing, he dies. If I try to save him and fail, he dies. But if I try and succeed, Maya was already moving, gathering the equipment she'd need for rapid active rewarming. At least he has a chance. Jake Williams, the respiratory therapist, stepped closer to the bed. What do you need me to do? Dr. Martinez shook his head, but Maya could see the conflict in his eyes. He was thinking the same thing she was, that Marcus Williams was going to die without aggressive intervention, protocol or no protocol. Maya, he said quietly, if you do this, I can't protect you from the consequences. I'm not asking you to, she replied, connecting warming equipment to the bed. But I am asking you to help me save this child's life. For a moment, the trauma bay was silent except for the beeping monitors and the sound of Marcus's parents crying softly near the doorway. Then Dr. Martinez nodded. Jake, I need respiratory support optimized for rapid rewarming protocol. Get me warm, humidified oxygen at maximum flow rate. Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward both men. They were risking their own careers to support her decision, trusting her judgment despite the potential consequences. What's happening? Marcus's mother asked, stepping closer to the bed. What are you doing differently? Maya looked up from her preparations to meet the woman's eyes. We're going to try something more aggressive, Mrs. Williams. It's risky, but it's your son's best chance. The woman nodded immediately. Do whatever you have to do, please. Just save him. Maya began the procedure with steady hands, despite the fact that her heart was racing. She'd read about this technique, studied the research, but she'd never actually performed it. The theory was sound. Rapid core rewarming could restart cardiac function in hypothermic drowning victims, especially children whose bodies were more resilient to oxygen deprivation. Core temperature 89.2, Jake reported. Cardiac rhythm still erratic, but showing some organized activity. Maya worked methodically, warming saline to precisely the right temperature, preparing the lavage equipment, coordinating with Dr. Martinez on cardiac support medications. Every movement had to be perfect. There would be no second chances. Beginning peritoneal lavage, she announced, inserting the catheter with practiced precision. Warm saline at 104 degrees, slow infusion to avoid thermal shock. The procedure required absolute focus. Too fast and Marcus could go into shock from the rapid temperature change. Too slow and his brain damage would become irreversible. Maya had to find the perfect balance, guided by monitoring equipment and her own clinical judgment. Temperature rising, Dr. Martinez reported, 91 degrees and climbing. Maya continued the lavage, cycling warm saline through Marcus's abdominal cavity to rapidly raise his core temperature. It was delicate work, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment, but she could see it was working. Jake, increase oxygen flow rate. His respiratory drive should start returning as we approach normal temperature. Already on it, Jake replied, adjusting the ventilator settings. Looking for spontaneous respiratory effort. Maya glanced at the clock. 12:15 a.m. She'd been working on Marcus for 23 minutes, performing a procedure that could save his life or end her career. But as she watched his color slowly improve as his core temperature climbed toward normal ranges, She knew she'd made the right choice. Temperature 94 degrees, Dr. Martinez announced. Cardiac rhythm showing improvement. Then, like a miracle, Marcus's heart monitor began showing a strong, regular rhythm. Not perfect, but organized and effective. His body was responding to the rewarming, his organs beginning to function normally again. Spontaneous respiratory effort detected, Jake called out, and Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Marcus was breathing on his own, his chest rising and falling with increasingly strong movements. Temperature 96 degrees and climbing steadily, Dr. Martinez reported, and Maya could hear the amazement in his voice. Blood pressure stabilizing. This is actually working. Maya continued the procedure, monitoring Marcus's vital signs as his body temperature approached normal. His skin color was improving, changing from that terrifying blue-gray to a healthier pink. His fingers and toes were warming, circulation returning to his extremities. At 12:31 a.m., exactly 39 minutes after Marcus had arrived at the hospital, his eyes fluttered open. "Mommy?" he whispered, his voice barely audible but unmistakably alive. The trauma bay erupted in controlled celebration. Marcus's parents sobbed with relief, reaching for their son's hands as Maya stepped back to give them space. Dr. Martinez was grinning broadly, and Jake was shaking his head in amazement. "I can't believe that worked," Jake murmured. "I mean, I hoped it would, but seeing it actually happen." Maya felt the adrenaline crash hitting her like a wave. Her hands began to shake, and she had to grip the side of the bed to steady herself. The enormity of what had just happened was beginning to sink in. She'd saved Marcus Williams' life, but she'd also violated every protocol in the book to do it. Temperature 98.6, Dr. Martinez announced. All vital signs stable. Neurological responses appear normal. Marcus was looking around the trauma bay with curious eyes, clearly confused but alert and responsive. His parents were crying and laughing simultaneously, touching his face and hands as if to convince themselves he was really okay. "Nurse Maya," Marcus said suddenly, reading her name tag. "Did you fix me?" Maya smiled through her own tears. "You fixed yourself, sweetie. You're very strong." But even as she celebrated Marcus's recovery, Maya was aware that her troubles were just beginning. Word of what had happened would reach hospital administration by morning. Dr. Stevens would want a full report. There would be questions about protocol violations, about unauthorized procedures, about the liabilities she'd exposed the hospital to. Maya had saved a child's life, but she might have destroyed her own career in the process. As Marcus was transferred to the ICU for observation, as his parents followed with grateful tears still streaming down their faces, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her decision. She'd chosen to act according to her medical judgment and moral conscience rather than hospital protocol. She'd risked everything to save a stranger's child. And she'd succeeded. But success, she was about to learn, didn't always protect you from consequences. Maya's apartment was silent except for the distant sound of waves against the shore. She'd arrived home at 2:30 a.m., exhausted but too wired to sleep. Her shift had ended with Marcus Williams stable in the ICU, his parents by his bedside, his vital signs strong and steady. But as Maya sat at her kitchen table, still wearing her scrubs, she couldn't shake the feeling that her victory might be short-lived. The local news was playing on her tablet, and at 7 o'clock a.m., the morning anchor began a story that made Maya's blood run cold. A dramatic rescue at Mercy General Hospital last night, where quick-thinking medical staff saved the life of 7-year-old Marcus Williams after a near-drowning accident at Sunset Pier. The boy fell through rotted pier planking and was submerged for several minutes before being pulled from the water by Good Samaritans. Hospital sources say the child made a remarkable recovery thanks to advanced emergency procedures. Maya muted the sound. Advanced emergency procedures. If only they knew how advanced those procedures had been, and how unauthorized. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Martinez. Emergency department meeting at 9 a.m. Dr. Vance wants to see everyone involved in the Williams case. Dr. Patricia Vance was the chief of staff at Mercy General, a brilliant physician but notoriously strict about hospital protocol. Maya had met her only a few times, but she knew Dr. Vance's reputation for holding staff accountable for policy violations. Maya showered and changed into professional clothes, her mind racing through possible scenarios. Best case, a slap on the wrist and a note in her personnel file. Worst case, termination and potential loss of her nursing license. As she drove back to the hospital, Maya passed Sunset Pier where Marcus had fallen through the rotted planking. There were already workers replacing the damaged boards, and she could see flowers left by well-wishers near the site of the accident. The hospital parking lot was busier than usual for a Saturday morning, and Maya noticed several news vans in the visitor parking area. The Williams story was apparently getting significant local coverage. Maya made her way to the conference room where the emergency department meeting was scheduled to take place. Dr. Martinez was already there, along with Jake Williams and several other staff members who had been involved in Marcus's care. "Maya," Dr. Martinez said quietly as she took a seat, "how are you feeling?" "Tired," she replied honestly, "but good about Marcus. How's he doing this morning?" "Remarkably well. Full neurological function, no signs of complications. His parents spent the night in the ICU, and they've been asking for you specifically." Before Maya could respond, Dr. Vance entered the room, followed by the hospital's legal counsel and director of risk management. This was not going to be a friendly debriefing. "Good morning, everyone," Dr. Vance began, taking her seat at the head of the conference table. "I'm sure you're all aware why we're here. The Williams case has garnered significant media attention, which means we need to ensure that all procedures were followed correctly." She opened a file and began reading from what Maya assumed was the incident report. At approximately 11:52 p.m. on Friday, September 15th, 7-year-old Marcus Williams was admitted to our emergency department following a near-drowning incident. Standard hypothermic resuscitation protocols were initiated under the supervision of Dr. Martinez. Dr. Vance looked up from the file. However, it appears that experimental procedures were also implemented without proper authorization. Ms. Chen, would you care to explain the rapid active rewarming protocol you performed? Maya felt every eye in the room focused on her. She'd known this moment would come, but she still wasn't fully prepared for it. "Marcus Williams was in cardiac arrest for an extended period," she began, keeping her voice steady. "Standard protocols weren't producing results, and his condition was deteriorating rapidly. Based on my review of current research on pediatric hypothermic drowning, I determined that rapid active rewarming was his best chance for survival." "Without authorization from Dr. Stevens or any other department head," the legal counsel interjected. "Dr. Stevens was unavailable," Maya replied. "The child didn't have time to wait for authorization." Dr. Vance consulted her file again. "The procedure you performed is considered experimental and carries significant risks. Hospital policy requires authorization from the department head or chief of staff for any experimental procedures." "I understand the policy," Maya said, "but I also understood that Marcus Williams would die without intervention." "That's not your determination to make," the risk management director spoke up. "You're a nurse, not a physician. Making treatment decisions outside your scope of practice exposes the hospital to enormous liability." Maya felt anger flare in her chest, but kept her voice controlled. "My scope of practice includes advocating for patient welfare and using my clinical judgment to provide the best possible care." Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. "If I may, Dr. Vance, Nurse Chen's intervention was successful. The child made a complete recovery with no complications. Her clinical judgment was sound." "That's not the point, Dr. Martinez," Dr. Vance replied sharply. "Success doesn't justify violation of established protocols. What if the procedure had failed? What if it had caused additional complications? The liability exposure would have been catastrophic." Maya stared at Dr. Vance, realizing that the conversation wasn't really about Marcus Williams or quality patient care. It was about institutional protection, about policies and procedures and liability insurance. "With respect, Dr. Vance," Maya said, "Marcus Williams is alive and healthy this morning. That seems like the most important outcome to consider." The room fell silent. Maya could see support in Dr. Martinez's eyes, uncertainty in Jake's expression, and clear disapproval in the faces of the administrators. Dr. Vance closed the file. "Ms. Chen, you're suspended pending a full investigation into this incident. You're not to return to work until the investigation is complete and a final determination is made regarding disciplinary action. Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Suspended. She'd saved a child's life and she was being punished for it. Dr. Vance, Dr. Martinez began. Surely we can, The decision is final, Dr. Vance interrupted. Ms. Chen, please clean out your locker and surrender your hospital ID badge. You'll be contacted regarding the investigation timeline. Maya stood slowly, feeling numb. Around the table, her colleagues avoided eye contact except for Dr. Martinez, who looked genuinely distressed by the turn of events. There's one more thing, Dr. Vance added as Maya reached the door. You're not to discuss this case with media outlets. Any public statements about hospital procedures or the Williams case could result in additional disciplinary action. Maya nodded and left the conference room, walking through familiar hallways that suddenly felt foreign and unwelcoming. In the space of an hour, she'd gone from being a respected member of the pediatric trauma team to a suspended employee under investigation. But as she cleaned out her locker, packing 6 years of accumulated memories into a cardboard box, Maya couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. Somewhere in the ICU, Marcus Williams was probably eating breakfast and asking his parents when he could go home. That had to count for something. The local news story aired that evening, and by Sunday morning, Maya's phone was ringing constantly. Nurse Maya, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the heroic rescue at Mercy General. Ms. Chen, this is the Tribune. Can you comment on the experimental procedure you used to save Marcus Williams? Maya, honey, this is Mrs. Peterson from down the hall. I saw you on the news. You're famous. Maya turned off her phone and tried to process what was happening. The news coverage was portraying her as a hero, but Mercy General Hospital had suspended her for the same actions that were making her a local celebrity. By Monday, the story had gained even more traction. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, Nurse Risks Career to Save Drowning Child. Social media was buzzing with Save Nurse Maya hashtags, and complete strangers were calling her a hero. But Maya felt anything but heroic as she sat in her apartment, unemployed and facing an uncertain future. Her sister called from Portland. Maya, what's going on? Mom saw you on the national news. She's worried sick. I'm fine, Lisa, just dealing with some work issues. Work issues? You saved a kid's life. How is that a work issue? Maya tried to explain hospital protocols, liability concerns, and disciplinary procedures, but it sounded absurd even to her own ears. How do you explain that saving a life can be a fireable offense? On Tuesday, Maya received a certified letter from Mercy General's legal department. She was scheduled for a formal disciplinary hearing on Friday at 2:00 p.m. The letter outlined the charges against her: violation of hospital protocol, performing unauthorized procedures, exceeding scope of practice, and creating liability exposure for the institution. Reading the formal charges made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. Maya was facing the potential end of her nursing career, and all because she'd chosen to save a child's life. That evening, Dr. Martinez called. Maya, I wanted you to know that several of us are preparing statements in your defense. What you did was medically sound and ethically justified. Thank you, Maya replied, genuinely grateful for his support. How's Marcus doing? He's being discharged tomorrow. Full recovery, no complications. His parents are asking about you constantly. After hanging up, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Joy that Marcus was healthy enough to go home, anger that she was being punished for making his recovery possible, and fear about what the disciplinary hearing might bring. The rest of the week passed in a blur of anxiety and isolation. Maya tried to keep busy, going for long walks on the beach, reading, attempting to maintain some kind of normal routine. But everywhere she went, people recognized her from the news coverage. You're the nurse who saved that little boy, a woman exclaimed in the grocery store. You're a hero. Maya smiled politely and mumbled thanks, but she didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a professional who had made a difficult decision under pressure and was now paying the price for it. Friday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly, matching Maya's mood as she drove to Mercy General for her disciplinary hearing. The conference room was set up formally, with hospital administrators on one side of a long table and a single chair for Maya on the other side. Dr. Vance presided over the hearing, flanked by the hospital's legal counsel, risk management director, and human resources representative. Maya had been advised she could bring her own legal representation, but she'd decided to represent herself. This hearing is to determine appropriate disciplinary action regarding the events of September 15th, Dr. Vance began, reading from prepared remarks. Ms. Chen, you stand accused of multiple violations of hospital protocol that put both the patient and the institution at risk. The legal counsel outlined the charges in detail, emphasizing the liability exposure Maya's actions had created. The risk management director presented statistics about malpractice claims related to unauthorized procedures. The HR representative reviewed hospital policies that Maya had allegedly violated. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she stood and faced the panel directly. I became a nurse to help people, she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. I took an oath to do no harm and to advocate for my patients. On September 15th, I was faced with a choice. Follow protocol and watch a child die, or use my clinical judgment and training to give him a chance at life. She paused, looking at each member of the panel. I chose to save Marcus Williams. I would make the same choice again. Dr. Martinez testified on Maya's behalf, explaining the medical reasoning behind her decision and the successful outcome. Jake Williams supported her account of events and praised her clinical skills. Several other colleagues submitted written statements defending Maya's character and competence, but Maya could see in the panel's faces that the decision had already been made. This hearing was a formality, a way for the hospital to document their deliberative process before imposing discipline. Dr. Vance recessed the hearing for 30 minutes to deliberate, though Maya suspected they were just going through the motions. When the panel reconvened, Dr. Vance's expression was grave. Ms. Chen, this panel recognizes that your intentions were noble and that the outcome in this case was positive. However, we cannot overlook the serious protocol violations that occurred. Hospital policies exist to protect patients, staff, and the institution itself. Maya felt her stomach drop, knowing what was coming next. Therefore, this panel has decided to terminate your employment with Mercy General Hospital, effective immediately. Your final paycheck will include compensation through today's date. Your employee benefits will continue for 30 days as required by law. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Terminated. Fired for saving a child's life. Additionally, Dr. Vance continued, this disciplinary action will be reported to the state nursing board as required by law. They will make their own determination regarding your nursing license. Maya sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Not only had she lost her job, but her entire career was now in jeopardy. No hospital would hire a nurse with a disciplinary record for unauthorized procedures. Dr. Vance, Dr. Martinez said, surely we can reconsider. The decision is final, Dr. Vance interrupted. This hearing is concluded. Maya gathered her few belongings and walked out of Mercy General Hospital for what she assumed would be the last time. In the parking lot, she sat in her car and finally allowed herself to cry. She'd saved Marcus Williams' life, but the system she'd devoted her career to serving had just destroyed her future. As Maya drove home through the rain, she had no idea that her story was far from over, and that vindication would come from the most unexpected source. Maya spent the weekend in a haze of depression and uncertainty. The news of her termination had leaked to the media, and by Monday morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. Hospital fires hero nurse for saving child's life, screamed the headline in the morning paper. Social media exploded with outrage, and Maya's phone buzzed constantly with interview requests from national news outlets. But Maya wasn't interested in becoming a media sensation. She turned off her phone and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. On Tuesday morning, there was a knock at her apartment door. Maya opened it to find Marcus Williams and his parents standing in the hallway, the 7-year-old holding a handmade card decorated with crayon drawings of nurses and hearts. "Nurse Maya," Marcus exclaimed, throwing his arms around her waist. "I made this for you." Maya knelt to Marcus's eye level, accepting the card with trembling hands. "Thank you, sweetie. How are you feeling?" "All better. Daddy says you saved my life. Are you really in trouble for helping me?" Maya glanced up at Marcus's parents, both of whom looked distressed. Mrs. Williams stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. "We just heard about what happened," she said. "We can't believe they fired you. You saved our son's life." "It's complicated," Maya replied, not wanting to burden them with the details of hospital politics. "The important thing is that Marcus is healthy and home with his family." Mr. Williams shook his head in disgust. "This is wrong. You should be getting a medal, not losing your job. We're going to fight this." Maya appreciated their support, but she knew that public outrage rarely changed institutional decisions. Mercy General had made their choice, and she'd have to live with the consequences. After the Williams family left, Maya sat on her couch, staring at Marcus's card. He'd drawn a picture of himself in a hospital bed with a smiling nurse beside him and written in unsteady 7-year-old handwriting, "Thank you for saving me. Love, Marcus." That afternoon, Maya received an unexpected phone call from a number she didn't recognize. "Miss Chen, this is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Rodriguez with the United States Coast Guard. I'd like to speak with you about the Marcus Williams case." Maya was confused. "The Coast Guard? I don't understand. This was a hospital matter, not a maritime emergency." "Actually, Ms. Chen, Marcus Williams fell into water within our jurisdiction. His rescue falls under maritime emergency protocols. I've been reviewing the case, and I'd like to meet with you if possible." Maya agreed to meet Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez at a coffee shop near the harbor the following morning. She had no idea what the Coast Guard's interest in the case might be, but at this point, she was curious about any new development. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez turned out to be a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and intelligent brown eyes. She was in civilian clothes, but carried herself with unmistakable military bearing. "Miss Chen, thank you for meeting with me," she began, ordering coffee for both of them. "I've been following your story in the news, and I wanted to discuss something with you." "I'm not sure how I can help you," Maya replied. "The incident happened at the hospital, not on the water." "Actually, that's where you're wrong," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez said, pulling out a file folder. "Marcus Williams's accident occurred at Sunset Pier, which is within federal maritime jurisdiction. Under Coast Guard regulations, his rescue is classified as a maritime emergency, and your actions fall under our purview." Maya was still confused. "I still don't understand what that means." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez smiled. "It means that the Coast Guard has authority to investigate and recognize civilian heroism in maritime emergencies. I've been reviewing your case, and I believe your actions constitute extraordinary civilian service." "Extraordinary civilian service?" "It's a formal recognition program," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez explained. "We honor civilians who demonstrate exceptional courage and skill in maritime emergencies. Your medical expertise and willingness to risk your career to save a life certainly qualify." Maya felt a flutter of hope, but tried to remain realistic. "That's very kind, but I'm not sure recognition from the Coast Guard will help with my employment situation." "You might be surprised," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez replied. "The Coast Guard Civilian Service Award carries significant weight in the medical community. We don't give it lightly, and when we do, people pay attention." She opened her file and showed Maya several documents. "I've been in contact with medical experts across the country about your case. Dr. James Patterson at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Sarah Kim at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Dr. Michael Rodriguez at Seattle Children's. All of them reviewed your actions and came to the same conclusion, which is that you performed a textbook emergency procedure under extreme pressure and saved a child's life. Dr. Patterson specifically said that the rapid active rewarming protocol you used was exactly what he would have recommended in similar circumstances." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time since her termination, she was hearing from medical professionals who supported her decision rather than criticized it. "There's more," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez continued. "I've been in contact with the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Emergency Nurses Association, and the Society of Critical Care Medicine. They're all interested in your case because it highlights the importance of clinical judgment in emergency situations." Maya was overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept the Coast Guard Civilian Service Award," Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez replied with a smile. "We'd like to present it to you in a public ceremony. It's time people knew that you're a hero, not a rule breaker." Maya thought about it for a moment. The recognition would be meaningful, but it wouldn't get her job back or repair her damaged career. "What about the nursing board investigation?" she asked. "Even if the Coast Guard recognizes me, I could still lose my license." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's smile widened. "I'm glad you asked. The nursing board has agreed to postpone their investigation pending our review. Professional organizations rarely act against someone who's receiving federal recognition for heroism." For the first time in weeks, Maya felt a spark of hope. Maybe her career wasn't over after all. "When would this ceremony take place?" she asked. "This Friday at Sunset Pier, where Marcus fell into the water. We think it's appropriate to honor your heroism at the site where the emergency occurred." Maya nodded slowly. "Okay, yes, I'll accept the award." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez reached across the table and shook Maya's hand. "Congratulations, Miss Chen. It's time the world knew what real heroism looks like." As Maya walked home from the coffee shop, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The Coast Guard's recognition wouldn't automatically solve all her problems, but it was validation that her actions had been appropriate and heroic rather than reckless and dangerous. But Maya had no idea that the Coast Guard ceremony would attract attention far beyond what she'd experienced so far, and that her story was about to reach people who could actually change her situation. Friday morning dawned clear and bright, with gentle waves lapping against Sunset Pier under a cloudless sky. Maya arrived early for the ceremony, surprised to find that the pier area had been transformed. A small stage had been erected near the spot where Marcus had fallen through the rotted planking, now repaired with fresh boards. Coast Guard personnel were setting up chairs and a sound system, while local media crews positioned their equipment for optimal coverage. "This is much bigger than I expected," Maya murmured to herself, watching the preparations. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez appeared beside her, now in full Coast Guard dress uniform. "Word gets out when we honor civilian heroes," she said, "especially when the story resonates with people the way yours has." Maya looked around nervously. "How many people are you expecting?" "Hard to say, but I can tell you that several very important people will be in attendance today." Before Maya could ask what she meant, she spotted Marcus Williams and his family arriving. The 7-year-old broke away from his parents and ran toward Maya, his face beaming with excitement. "Nurse Maya, are you getting a medal today?" Maya knelt down to hug him. "I am, sweetie. Thank you for coming to see it." "I told everyone at school that you're my hero," Marcus said proudly. "My teacher says heroes are people who help others even when it's hard." Mrs. Williams joined them, looking emotional. "Maya, we can't thank you enough for what you did. Marcus is healthy and happy because of your courage." As more people arrived, Maya began to understand the scope of what Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had organized. There were families with children, medical professionals in scrubs, local officials, and dozens of community members who had followed her story in the news. "Maya!" a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Dr. Martinez approaching with Jake Williams and several other colleagues from Mercy General. "You all came," Maya said, feeling overwhelmed by their support. "Of course we came," Jake replied. "What you did was amazing, and everyone should know it." Dr. Martinez looked around at the growing crowd. "This is quite a turnout. I think people are ready to hear about real heroism for a change." At 2:00 p.m., Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez stepped up to the microphone on the small stage. The crowd quieted as she began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today at this very special ceremony. We're here to honor civilian heroism in its purest form. Someone who risked everything to save a stranger's life." Maya felt her cheeks flush as hundreds of eyes focused on her. She'd never been comfortable with attention, preferring to work quietly behind the scenes. On the evening of September 15th, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez continued, 7-year-old Marcus Williams fell through rotted pier planking at this very location. He was submerged in 62-degree water for several minutes, and by the time he reached Mercy General Hospital, his chances of survival were minimal. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Nurse Maya Chen was finishing her shift when Marcus arrived. Standard medical protocols were failing, and the child's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Faced with a choice between following hospital policy and saving a life, Nurse Chen made a decision that required extraordinary courage. Maya could see people in the crowd nodding, understanding the impossible position she'd been placed in. She performed an advanced emergency procedure that violated hospital protocol, but was medically appropriate for the situation. Because of her expertise, clinical judgment, and moral courage, Marcus Williams is alive and healthy today. The crowd erupted in applause, and Maya saw Marcus Williams grinning and waving from where he sat with his parents in the front row. However, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez continued, and the crowd quieted again. Nurse Chen was terminated from her position for saving this child's life. She was punished for the very actions we're here to honor today. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the audience. Maya could see angry faces, people shaking their heads in disgust at the injustice of her situation. That's why today's ceremony is so important, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez said, her voice growing stronger. The United States Coast Guard recognizes heroism wherever we find it, and we don't allow bureaucracy to diminish the value of lives saved. She gestured for Maya to join her on the stage. Maya's legs felt unsteady as she walked up the steps, but the encouraging faces in the crowd gave her strength. Maya Chen, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez announced formally. By the authority vested in me by the United States Coast Guard, and in recognition of your extraordinary courage, medical expertise, and dedication to preserving human life, I present you with the Coast Guard Civilian Service Award. She pinned a medal to Maya's blouse and handed her a formal certificate. The crowd rose to their feet in thunderous applause, and Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks. But the ceremony wasn't over. There's someone else here who wanted to say something, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez announced. She gestured toward the back of the crowd where Maya was shocked to see Dr. Patricia Vance, the Chief of Staff at Mercy General, making her way toward the stage. Maya's stomach dropped. What was Dr. Vance doing here? Had she come to further humiliate Maya in front of this supportive crowd? Dr. Vance climbed the steps to the stage, her expression unreadable. She took the microphone from Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez and looked out at the crowd. My name is Dr. Patricia Vance, and I'm the Chief of Staff at Mercy General Hospital, she began. The crowd's murmur was less than welcoming. Many of these people knew that she was responsible for Maya's termination. I came here today because I owed it to this community, to Marcus Williams and his family, and most importantly, to Nurse Maya Chen to say something publicly. Maya held her breath, unsure what was coming next. Hospital administrators face many challenges in balancing patient care with institutional requirements. Sometimes, in our effort to manage risk and maintain order, we lose sight of what's truly important. Dr. Vance turned to look directly at Maya. Nurse Chen, you were faced with an impossible choice on September 15th. You could follow our protocols and watch a child die, or you could use your professional judgment and expertise to save his life. The crowd was completely silent now, everyone focused on Dr. Vance's words. You chose to save Marcus Williams, and in doing so, you demonstrated the highest ideals of the nursing profession. You put patient welfare above your own career security, and you succeeded in preserving a young life that might otherwise have been lost. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was Dr. Vance actually apologizing? Therefore, Dr. Vance continued, on behalf of Mercy General Hospital, I want to formally apologize for our response to your heroic actions. We were wrong to terminate your employment, and we were wrong to punish you for saving a life. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Maya felt dizzy with shock and relief. Furthermore, Dr. Vance said, raising her voice over the crowd noise, I would like to offer you reinstatement to your position as a pediatric trauma nurse with full back pay and benefits. Additionally, we would like you to consider a new position as Emergency Protocol Development Coordinator, helping us ensure that our policies support, rather than hinder life-saving medical care. Maya stared at Dr. Vance in amazement. Not only was her job being restored, but she was being offered a promotion and the chance to prevent other medical professionals from facing the same impossible choice she'd confronted. Dr. Vance, Maya said, taking the microphone with trembling hands, I don't know what to say. Say you'll come back, Dr. Vance replied with a genuine smile. Mercy General needs nurses like you, and more importantly, Our patients need nurses like you. Maya looked out at the crowd, seeing the faces of people who had supported her through the darkest period of her career. She saw Marcus Williams jumping up and down with excitement in the front row. She saw her colleagues from the hospital beaming with pride. Yes, she said into the microphone. Yes, I'll come back. The crowd's celebration was deafening. People were cheering, applauding, and wiping away tears. Maya felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and vindication. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez stepped back to the microphone as the crowd began to quiet down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what real heroism looks like. This is what happens when moral courage meets professional expertise. And this is why we must always remember that saving lives is more important than following rules. She gestured toward Maya, who was still wearing her Coast Guard medal and holding her reinstatement letter from Dr. Vance. Maya Chen risked her career to save a stranger's child, and today she's been vindicated by the very system that initially punished her. Let her story remind us all that doing the right thing is never the wrong choice. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Maya found herself surrounded by well-wishers, colleagues, and strangers who wanted to congratulate her and thank her for her service. But the moment that meant the most came when Marcus Williams worked his way through the crowd to reach her. "Nurse Maya," he said, tugging on her hand to get her attention. "Are you coming back to take care of sick kids?" Maya knelt down to his eye level, still wearing her Coast Guard medal. "Yes, sweetie, I'm coming back." "Good," Marcus said with a serious expression, "because you're the best nurse ever and all the kids need you." Maya hugged him tightly, thinking about how this remarkable child had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. She'd risked everything to save him, and in the end, he'd helped save her too. 1 year later, Maya stood in the same pediatric trauma unit where her journey had begun. But everything was different now. She wore a new badge that read Maya Chen, RN, Emergency Protocol Development Coordinator. And the trauma bay had been updated with new equipment and procedures based on her recommendations. The Maya protocol, as it had become known throughout the hospital, provided clear guidelines for emergency situations where standard procedures might not be sufficient. It empowered nurses and doctors to use their clinical judgment while providing legal protection for life-saving decisions. "Dr. Chen," called a young nurse from across the unit. Maya had completed her master's degree in emergency nursing and earned the honorary title after her work revolutionizing emergency care protocols. "Call me Maya," she replied with a smile. "What do you need, Sarah?" Sarah Martinez, a first-year pediatric nurse, approached nervously. "I have a question about the hypothermic resuscitation protocol. If standard warming techniques aren't working, at what point do I consider more aggressive intervention?" Maya walked with Sarah to the computer terminal where the new protocols were displayed. "Tell me about your patient." 6-year-old girl fell through ice at the lake. She's been in cardiac arrest for 8 minutes, and standard rewarming isn't producing results. Maya felt a familiar chill of recognition. Another child, another impossible situation, another nurse facing the choice between protocol and life. "What does your clinical judgment tell you?" Maya asked. Sarah bit her lip nervously. "That she needs rapid active rewarming. But I'm scared. What if something goes wrong? What if I make the wrong choice?" Maya put a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah, you've been trained to make these decisions. You know the protocols, you understand the risks, and you have the authority to act. The question isn't whether you might make the wrong choice, it's whether you're willing to make the hard choice." Sarah nodded, her confidence growing. "Will you assist me?" "Of course," Maya replied. "Let's go save a life." As they worked together over the next hour, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that night with Marcus Williams. The hospital now trusted its medical professionals to use their judgment in emergency situations. Nurses were empowered to advocate for their patients without fear of institutional retaliation. And most importantly, more children were surviving situations that might have been fatal under the old protocols. The 6-year-old girl responded beautifully to the rapid rewarming procedure, just as Marcus had a year earlier. As her parents cried with relief and Sarah beamed with professional pride, Maya felt the deep satisfaction that came from knowing her struggle had led to meaningful change. Later that evening, Maya was finishing her shift when she received a visitor. Marcus Williams, now 8 years old and taller than she remembered, knocked on her office door. "Nurse Maya, Mom said I could visit if I finished my homework." Maya grinned and gave him a hug. "Marcus, you're getting so big. How's second grade treating you?" "Good. I'm learning about heroes in history class and I told my teacher about you. She said you're a real-life hero." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "You're very sweet, but I was just doing my job." Marcus looked at her seriously. "My mom says that sometimes doing your job means being brave. She says you were brave for me even when it was scary." Maya knelt down to Marcus's eye level, struck by his maturity. "You know what, Marcus? You were brave too. You fought to come back to us that night, and you've grown into such a wonderful young man." "I want to be a nurse like you when I grow up," Marcus announced. "So I can help kids too." Maya smiled, thinking about the cycle of inspiration that connected them. Marcus had changed her life by giving her the chance to be truly heroic, and now she was inspiring him to consider a career in healthcare. That would be wonderful, Marcus. The world always needs more people who want to help others. As Marcus left with his mother, Maya returned to her office to finish some paperwork. On her desk was a letter from the American Academy of Pediatrics, inviting her to speak at their annual conference about emergency protocols and clinical decision-making. Next to it was a thank you card from the parents of the 6-year-old girl she and Sarah had saved that morning. Maya's computer chimed with a new email from a nursing school in California. A professor had heard about her story and wanted to include the Marcus Williams case in their ethics curriculum. The email read, "Your example of moral courage in the face of institutional pressure is exactly what we want our students to understand about professional nursing practice." Maya leaned back in her chair, looking around her office at the awards, letters, and photographs that documented her journey from suspended nurse to nationally recognized expert in emergency care. But what she valued most were the simple drawings from young patients, the thank you notes from families, and the photo of Marcus Williams from his birthday party last month. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. "Another successful save today using the Maya protocol. Emergency Medicine Journal wants to interview you about clinical judgment in pediatric emergencies. Interested?" Maya typed back, "Absolutely. The more people who understand that saving lives sometimes requires courage, the better." As she prepared to leave for the day, Maya walked through the pediatric trauma unit one more time. New nurses were caring for their patients with confidence, knowing they had the support and authority to make difficult decisions when necessary. The trauma bays were equipped with updated protocols that prioritized patient outcomes over institutional protection. Most importantly, children who might not have survived under the old system were going home healthy to their families. Maya thought about her journey from that terrible night when she'd been suspended for saving Marcus Williams to this moment, when she was helping shape the future of emergency medical care. She'd learned that real heroism wasn't about single dramatic acts. It was about having the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult, and then working to ensure that others could make the same choice without facing the consequences she'd endured. As Maya drove home through the evening traffic, she passed out Sunset Pier, where a small plaque now commemorated civilian heroism in maritime emergencies. The inscription read, "In recognition of all those who risk everything to save the lives of others, Maya Chen, Coast Guard Civilian Service Award recipient, September 2023. But Maya's favorite part of the plaque was the smaller text at the bottom. "Sometimes the right decision isn't the safe decision. It's the one that saves lives." Maya Chen had started as a competent nurse following protocols and ended as a leader who understood that true professionalism sometimes required breaking rules to serve a higher purpose. She'd risked everything to save one child and ended up transforming an entire system of care. And somewhere in the city, 8-year-old Marcus Williams was probably doing his homework, dreaming of becoming a nurse and carrying forward the inspiration that connected them all. The circle was complete, but the story would continue in every life saved, every nurse empowered to trust their judgment, and every family that would never know how close they came to losing someone they loved. Maya had learned that heroes aren't born. They're made in moments of impossible choice, when doing the right thing matters more than protecting yourself. And the best heroes don't just save lives. They create systems that help others save lives too. As she pulled into her driveway, Maya's phone buzzed with one final message of the day. It was from Sarah Martinez, the young nurse she'd mentored that morning. "Thank you for teaching me that being a nurse means being brave. The little girl is going home tomorrow. Her parents wanted me to tell you that angels wear scrubs." Maya smiled, thinking about how the courage to save one life had rippled outward to save countless others. She'd started her journey as a competent professional and ended as a hero who understood that the most important protocol of all was the one written in the heart of every healthcare worker. First, do no harm. But sometimes, that means having the courage to break rules that get in the way of saving lives. The hero in Scrubs had returned with the ultimate elixir, the knowledge that individual moral courage could transform entire institutions, and that one person's willingness to risk everything for a stranger could inspire a whole new generation of healers. Marcus Williams was alive, healthy, and dreaming of becoming a nurse. Maya Chen was exactly where she belonged, saving lives and teaching others to do the same. And somewhere in pediatric units across the country, the Maya protocol was helping healthcare professionals make the same courageous choice she'd made that night, but with the support and protection they needed to do what was right. The story of the hero in Scrubs had become bigger than any one person, any one night, or any one life saved. It had become a testament to the power of moral courage and the ripple effects of doing what's right, even when it's terrifying. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who save lives by making it possible for others to save lives too. And that legacy would live on long after Maya Chen retired. In every nurse who trusted their judgment, every protocol that prioritized patients over paperwork, and every child who went home healthy because someone had the courage to break the rules that mattered less than the life that mattered most. The end.